I think we can switch gears. It looks like.
Let's see. Can you see me?
Yes.
Are we?
Are you on?
Am I with the Northern Democratic Club?
Yeah. You are.
Well, I'll be darned. I don't know how it happened, but thank you. Okay. Okay, you can hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh, we just updated this thing today, and so, oh man, I don't know. Excuse me, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just about to introduce you. I'm sure everybody already knows you, but we have with us today Supervisor Cruz McPherson for our district, the 5th District of the County of Santa Cruz, and he is going to speak to some of the impact, the damage that the storms did. And I didn't give him too much specifics on this, but I'm hoping that he'll speak to sort of the progress and timelines in terms of sort of recovery efforts, repairs, efforts to improve some of those failed portions of our roads and bridges and such, and what the cost was and what resources that we ended up with in the county, because there was a lot of things happening, and it'd be nice to get sort of an overview now that we're not quite in the middle of it.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to go? Okay. Thank you. I thank you for the invitation. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry that it's taken me a little time to get on, but and thanks for all the work you're doing in the San Lorenzo Valley and Scotts Valley as well. There's no question it's been a very challenging start of the year, 2023, to say the least. In fact, in the past 3 years with COVID and the CZU fire, it's presented really more disasters than any small county like ours has ever experienced, I think, in the state. It's just a short period of time. And then you add on the 2016-17 storms too. It even gets worse. And it's been a very emotional and a very expensive and sometimes really unpredictable, most of the time unpredictable. But now we have this new disaster, which once again brought to the light the complicated web of the need for federal, state, and local responsibilities that exist during and after a disaster. We currently have an estimate of about $76 million in damage to public infrastructure throughout the county and the 3 cities, and $20 million in agricultural damage. And that figure probably will go up, I think. And there's a great deal of recovery work to be done, as we know, and I'm confident that our county, with the state and federal leaders that we have, and will partner on some really good solutions as quickly as possible. It's really worth noting, though, that we're still very much in the recovery mode from the CZU fire, and some of our storm survivors of today's recent storm are fire survivors of not too many years ago, and they face new challenges around debris flow and road damage, septic repairs in particular. With so much discussed tonight, I'd like to focus on 3 main topics to help frame the conversation: response, recovery, and outstanding challenges. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And what made the recent emergency response so challenging was that conditions kept changing every couple of days and sometimes every couple of hours. And there was barely enough time to regroup and reassess of where we should go. And then we should go to, there was another increased danger point someplace else. The county's Emergency Operations Center kicked into gear as the forecast worsened before New Year's Day a month ago. And our county leadership worked well with our sheriff's office, fire departments, and other agencies, as it did in the CZU fire, to prepare our response to this time the impending flooding and closed roads and landslides. All those things occurred with severe flooding in Felton Grove and elsewhere, landslides on Highway 9 and Boulder Creek and Ben Lomond, and slip outs in Bear Creek, China Grade, Glenwood, Lompico, and other roads. No question the transportation network was really stymied, and that was it still remains a big obstacle for us to overcome. At one point in the beginning of the storms, about 80 county maintained roads were closed or partially closed. And I'm glad to say that we have worked to reduce that number to about 10 now. We have 600 miles of roadway and county roads to oversee. And it really is something when such a huge slide like we had on Highway 9 can impact so many people in so many ways. The sheriff's office immediately issued evacuation orders, and several times during the storms when the danger of floods and slides became a concern for certain zones, in particular the Felton Grove, Paradise Park, and those areas. And we know this can be tiresome with these evacuation orders, but our goal always and first and foremost is life safety, and we accomplished that, so that felt really good. Many of the residents sheltered in place, and fortunately we had no loss of life, though there has been several severe damage, I should say, to our private property that and public infrastructure throughout the county. As I stated, that's about $76 million of damage to our public infrastructure alone at this point. The county set up evacuation centers in Santa Cruz, Watsonville, and Mid-County for those impacted by the evacuation orders or actual floods. And my office received requests for evacuation sites in the valley, but our safety officials warned that it was too risky given the potential for flooding and more slides that would landlock, if you will, people. If we put them into some centers and really bunched them in there, then they couldn't get out maybe. And that's been a case in some areas of the valley. The damage created by the storms really isolated a number of communities due to the loss of roads and power. Those are the two, and in some cases, the loss of water. The county has been in frequent contact with the California Office of Emergency Services, PG&E, and FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to meet the needs as quickly as possible. Even before the immediate danger was over, which took nearly 3 weeks, we shifted as quickly as we could to a recovery mode, and our public works road crews began assessing the damage and prioritized the road repairs and coordinating cleanup efforts to clear the way for residents to access even one lane of traffic where possible. Bear Creek Road was open to one-lane traffic in late January, and we coordinated a traffic signal on Glen Arbor Road to help ease the backups created by the Highway 9 closure in Ben Lomond. And I might say that when I went to see that disastrous slide between the Glen Arbor connectors there with Congressman Panetta and Sheriff Hart, the gentleman there said, we're going to have at least a week of dry weather before we can pull this mud out of the road, because if we do that, if we pull it out, there's just more that's going to come down. And so they wanted to get started as soon as possible, but it would have made matters worse if we would have done it. And I'll talk more about the roads in a moment when I discuss the outstanding challenges. But at the urgency of my office, the county established dumpsters at 3 sites in District 5, Felton Grove, Paradise Park, and Ben Lomond. And folks were able to dump their storm debris there at the county's expense. They couldn't put mud in there because that is not allowable into our dumps because of some environmental concerns of what might be included in the mud that was there or that came from those various areas throughout the county. We also created a creation of a disaster recovery center with one site in the Felton Library where storm survivors could connect with FEMA, county departments, the Small Business Administration, and a host of other organizations. And it was just announced that the center will close this Friday, but the county will continue to host the recovery resource on our website. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the volunteers that really stepped up and helped people, your friends and neighbors. The volunteer center really directed people where they were needed most. They did a phenomenal job of that. It was really heartwarming under some very difficult conditions that we had. And now we can, I think, get into the rebuilding process. There are probably some rainstorms coming, but we currently have 9 residences in District 5 that have been red tagged for storm damage or geological hazards, such as landslides. And a red tag means the structure cannot be is inhabitable. So we also have another 42 that have been yellow tagged, which means the occupants need to be aware of potential issues, but they can stay at the home. There's just a warning sign that if you go back in and there's a heavy storm, there could be more problems. On Tuesday, this next week, the Board of Supervisors will consider amending the contract with 4 Leaf, which was hired by the county in 2020 after the fires to operate our fire recovery permit center. The contract amendment that will add storm rebuilding to the 4 Leaf scope of work. I brought that up to the board, and when it was on the consent agenda, but I think we needed to have a deeper conversation about how fire recovery is progressing. And we're talking about that the former disaster that we had, especially if we're going to add more work to the permit center. And I anticipate we're going to have some analysis by our staff this next Tuesday that will provide some explanation for why we have hundreds of properties eligible for rebuilding that are either still in progress or have not sought permits or have been issued permits but have not picked them up. We don't have the full answers to that because people haven't just returned or let us know the reason why. And I'm very supportive of creating an expedited pathway for disaster rebuilding, but it needs to be just that, expedited. And it's not clear to me at this point that we are moving as fast as we had hoped to after the fire. We know some of the limitations, the cost of construction, the difficulty in clearing hurdles for fire access, geological hazards, and new septic requirements that we have. But we have established and continue to work on removing hurdles where we can. But some of these issues are governed by state law and not up to us. For instance, the septic laws, we are implementing what they laid down as that you had to do some improvements that had to be made if you had a new septic tank, if you had to build one. The same will be true of storm rebuild. This storm, we will do our best to solve problems when we can elevate the challenges to our state and elected officials when the issues are beyond our jurisdiction. The ongoing challenges now, number one is how to help people who live on private roads that are severely damaged. We are dealing with a serious situation now on Harmon Gulch Road, for instance, where 20 households live above the road failure without the ability to get out to get some supplies. The county cannot fund those repairs for private roads, but we have been working with those residents to see if FEMA or the state could fund the repairs. The problem is that those things take time, and we are looking into other options. And as a matter of fact, I think on that Harmon Road issue that it includes the state as well as sometimes the federal government in saying, okay, you can do this or you can't do that. And so it's not the county that's saying, no, you can't do this. We're trying to find out how we can do it. So we're working with the state and federal agencies to see how we can resolve those issues as fast as possible. This disaster once again pointed to our 2 significant challenges. How does the county fund repairs to the 600 miles of roadway that I already mentioned that we have oversight of, that it maintains, especially when we have had back-to-back disasters without consistent federal reimbursement? We had about $200 million worth of damages in that fire, and we're still working through a backlog of repairs from the 2016-17 storms, as well as nearly 70, as well as how do we get nearly $70 million on unreimbursed expenses from COVID and the fire. We think that we're owed that by the federal government in particular and the state too. And pressed upon our Congressman Jimmy Panetta, who is our congressman now, as we did, and we worked very well. We were working very well with him, as we did with the former congresswoman who was drawn into another district, NASU. But he's got a clear picture of the needs in our county and how we're going to recover. We had a town hall meeting in Zayante, 2 weeks ago, and at least 250 people showed up there. And we had federal and state officials and Congressman Panetta and Sheriff Hart, and our road crews. So the second question is, how do we help these private road owners prepare for funding emergency repairs? Insurance isn't always the answer, because the difficulty of obtaining insurance or maintaining it is a high risk rates. And if you apply for insurance and they turn you down, then you can't get it. So people are hesitant how to move ahead on that level. So what we know to be true is that disaster planning, response, and funding are the new imperatives for our county, which, by the way, only receives about 13 cents of every property tax on the dollar of property tax from the state. And that's because way back when Prop 13 was passed, we were a very efficient state and we didn't have high property taxes. And to change that would take a statewide initiative that other counties would not agree to, because they're happier than we are that they have a higher rate than we do. This is why we have to create our own sources of funding through our county ballot box for roads, libraries, and other initiatives, which we have done and successfully done so. 1/2 majorities on a lot of these. We have another big challenge in the months ahead, and I'm looking forward to working with Congressman Panetta, Assemblymember Gail Pellerin, who was just elected, and then Senator John Laird, who is in some top committee assignments in the state Senate, and see how they can help us in our district, our valley, really, as much as we can, as quickly as we can. But the president disclosed an emergency response that you could get possibly 100% within 60 days. But that doesn't cover everything. It's only the public assistance matters that are included in that. And that disaster response, or what you could get, is different from what we had in the fires, where you could get 75% of the money, but the county needed to match it with 25%. We still think that about $70 million is owed to us by the federal government from between the COVID pandemic and the CZU fire. And now we have this on top of it. So we're going to have another, we had a town hall on February 2nd. It's at 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. On the countywide disaster recovery. And we're going to have one February 7th on Tuesday too. So if you want to hear more detail about some of the recovery and the updated, that would be a good town hall to attend. I think that's about it. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I don't know if I can have all the answers, but this is something that nobody's experienced. And I think this last the storm was the worst storm we've had in Santa Cruz County since the earthquake, because it impacted everybody, all sections of the county, from the Pajaro River to the San Lorenzo River, up and down and throughout Santa Cruz County. And the San Lorenzo Valley got hit the hardest. The president came to the mid-county because there was better access there to visit Capitola and Watsonville, and Seacliff State Beach Park. But really the biggest hit was in San Lorenzo Valley. And he knows it. I know he does, because I know Congressman Panetta has let him know it, as has Congresswoman Eshoo. But with that said, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you have. It's a long haul, and just keep smiling and keep helping your neighbors, as everybody has. It's been really impressive, and thank God you have, because as bad as it is, it would be worse if we just got all down doom and gloom and everybody's been up and about and helping each other out. So I appreciate that very much. And I know so many of those that were really flooded do too. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. I will call in a couple people here. I do want to check those dates. I think you said February 2nd and February 7th.
Seven, yeah.
But those
but Tuesday, I think it is. Yeah.
Are we talking March, maybe?
No, this is coming up. Excuse me. Here, wait a minute.
Isn't today?
Oh, excuse me. No, wait a minute.
Yeah, today's the 7th.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Good to be sure.
All day.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. I talked to somebody else about that today too. So anyway, go ahead, please. If you have any questions, I think Monica does.
Let's start with Glenn. I think Glenn started.
Oh, excuse me. You go ahead. You run it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Sure. It's not so much a question as I just want to raise some awareness. So, coming through COVID, there was a huge shift into people working from home, right? But in order to work from home in many industries, if not most, you have to have reliable power, reliable internet, and reliable water. If you don't have those things, you can't work from home. And in fact, my family, I live on a private road. I live on El Soyo above the high school, had such inconsistent power service, not necessarily due to PG's fault, but because they'd fix a pole and a tree would fall and knock it out again, and just repeating because of the series of atmospheric storms. But this forms a kind of invisible damage, an invisible economic loss that I don't think anybody is really addressing, because people are losing work, they're losing income. It's not like a tree fell on the house, visible damage. It's invisible damage caused by a lack of infrastructure. And so there are two things that I would love to see. One is an improved infrastructure, but the other is some relief for people who suffered economic loss due to the storms, as well as actual physical loss.
Okay. Yeah, that would have to, I mean, I'm not passing the buck, but I'm with the county. Like I said, we paid for some things we think we're still owed. So we're not in a position to get into that of helping somebody with their economic woes. I think there are some programs through FEMA that you can apply for, but it would have to come from the state and county level, and because I know the county just doesn't have the financial resources to continue its operation, which it has through the various departments throughout with our 2,500 employees that we have in health services, human services, whatever it might be. I don't see that we're going to be able to help somebody who's suffered economic damages.
I don't know that.
I'll try to get back to you to see, like the Small Business Administration gives, but it gives loans, low interest loans. It's not cash outlays. But I'll see what we can, if we can get back to you with anything else in that regard.
Yeah, thank you.
You're right. PG&E, it's, I mean, there's times they can be challenged, shall we say, but we had one of the recovery centers, one of the two recovery centers in the state here at the Skyview Theater in Santa Cruz. The other one was up in northern in Mendocino County, I think it was. They had technicians from 8 states and Canada down here to help us, and they're doing what they can, but it's a nightmare, and they went underground as fast as anybody can do it, but it's very expensive for them.
To clarify my request, I wasn't exactly expecting cash outlay from the county, but I was hoping the county might serve as a coordinating effort for some of the other ones that do.
Sure. Okay. And we are in constant contact with some of those agencies, the federal agencies that might have that possibility, but I don't know. They'll probably get into the infrastructure of things, and before they do anything with a person's economic situation. I don't think they're taking that down. The record of there's no record of how much people have lost and so forth.
That's the point. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now you can go on to the next.
Monica, you're up.
Thanks, Ray. Well, hi. Supervisor McPherson. Thanks
Hi.
for being here. It's always good to hear from you. And I wanted to kind of pass along a bit of information that I was hearing. There's a group of us who are in the community provider community up here in SLV. We call ourselves the SLV nonprofit roundtable group. We meet monthly, and we've met a little bit extra during this recovery time because there's been so much need. And a number of us were at the Zianti firehouse meeting, the one where there was over 200 people there. And first of all, I want to thank you for coming to that and being there at the meeting, and for also bringing so many of our state and federal and sort of different agency representatives there. And I think, you know, we heard a lot of dozens of residents talking about the different needs and what their experience has been like. And we also heard some really helpful responses from PG&E and from different state agencies, like really promising to help. But I think what I'm hearing from, you know, these other leaders in the community is just like, so much is gonna depend on the follow-up to that kind of meeting, like where the rubber hits the road, right? Like how, like what is PG&E gonna do? And like, what are we gonna see next? And I think what we're hoping and what I'd recommend is, if at all possible, to host another really SLV specific in-person meeting as a follow-up to the Zianti Firehouse meeting. Really, if you can bring some of the same players to just sort of talk about the progress, because we just heard a lot of the really great progress, right? The Bear Creek opening, some of the road progress, some of the things that you've learned. And I think that might really help to, you know, just demonstrate to the community that there's this consistent attention to the effects of the storm. And I know that I would love to be there, and we'd love to hear from everybody again. So that's just a request that I think may be helpful.
Okay, I agree. It's always good, and that was quite a good turnout and a strong turnout. Very good questions. I think that I'm sure that Congressman Panetta, if we get and now that we're, shall we say, settled a little, we can get a better viewpoint, and it's taken some time now. We're, like I said, with the road recovery, and there's some major roads. Bear Creek is not fully open, and Santa Clara County side of that, Bear Creek has a problem over there too. So I put all that together. You know, with now that I think we're gonna have at least a week or 10 days of no rain, so that's going to really help a lot, and I think we can get a better viewpoint. And I'm sure we'll have an update before the County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Lou, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I had a question. It's a great presentation. As far as contacting the District 5 office directly, is email still basically the primary way? I've noticed that the District 5 office has been a little more difficult to get a timely response from regarding direct communications than the other supervisor offices. So yeah, I was curious if there's if really? It's just the two emails. Yeah.
No, email is probably the best, because you have myself and my analyst, one of my analysts, Dan Brown, is with us today. He's also at that February 7th meeting. When I talked about February 7th, excuse me, that's today, so I get it. And he's looking in on that, as well as Jenny Johnson. But the best way to do it is just to write the 5th District office. And we get plenty of, we try to respond to some of the responses that we just don't know at this point how quickly we can do something, or why PG&E is out there and not, you know, what they're doing or how they're doing it. They keep us updated, but it changes. It's an ever-changing scenario right now that we're going through, I'm afraid. I felt, well, I don't know. We have gotten back to a lot of people. I'm sorry if we didn't get back to you, it sounds like, but I don't know why that might have been, but we try to get back as quickly as we can, but we're getting sometimes, you know, tens and hundreds of requests, and we just try to send out a big blast of an email. And you can, you know, look at our newsletter too, that we have of what we're doing, or what's coming up, or where people can go to get assistance.
I did a second part to the question. I live up in the Zayani area, Zayani proper, so a couple miles past the fire station there. And we both Zayani and Lampico, which actually does have quite a few people in it. The PG&E and the communication lines to both of those areas seem to be dependent on basically one link that it gets knocked out pretty often. I think we didn't have PG&E access for about 7 days, and about this even longer with Comcast. And unfortunately, when the power goes down, the cell phone towers there's less reception there too. I was curious if the county has any, or what agency within the county would address like redundancy in either the power distribution or the communication systems.
Well, one thing we're trying to do is expand, and it's a statewide move. It's one I've really been into, is expand broadband so we can have communications. Also, to have another emergency outlet from Lampico. We have been trying to do this. We've had some, these are decent people, but there's some property owners they can be convinced that people wouldn't use that as a regular road through their property. But we're still working on that. Those are the kinds of things that we want to do. Now, the down power lines, I went up there, just a couple days after the bad storm, and I bet there were 12 PG&E trucks there, and it was waterfalls coming down and everything. But so they tried to get there. How they can improve their services. They're trying to get at it as quickly as possible. It looked like literally a war zone up there when I went up there. Do you live up there? I don't know if you do, but man, it was not pretty. I know that. But we're trying to get another emergency evacuation route out of there. Have been trying to do that, and we will continue to work on it. I think we'll get there. It'll only be for an emergency use, though, that we would do that. As far as communication, which is key, as we know, the phone lines and so forth, we're trying to expand that and get broadband expanded out into some of the more rural, or shall we say, those areas like Lampico that are really removed from the close community that many other sections of the county enjoy. So that's what we're trying to do at this point, is improve the communications and the road ingress and egress for people in emergency situations. Jim Brown of my office, he might even want to, Jim, I think you wanted to say, if you're there, we have this other town hall meeting. It's a county-wide one. And I was at the last one, February 2nd, but I obviously wanted to be here tonight, but he's been there. So I don't know if he'd heard some of those comments too, but I'll get back to you, or if, or just email us and say, just give me your questions and we'll try to get back to you.
Okay, great. And I see that JM uploaded a document about the broadband master plan grant information, we'll look at that. And that sounds interesting. I have another question. Alina, would you like to?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Bruce, for coming here tonight to talk to us. First of all, but I have a road drainage issue in my neighborhood, and I've tried to work with the county for a few years, and we have like a private road that comes down and it collects all the rainwater into a culvert. But when it meets the county road, it spills out all over the road and turning it into the river. Actually, it made the news during the storms. So then actually the county came in to repave, which is wonderful, but they wouldn't put any culverts or drains in, which causes my street to flood and a pond to form. And I know, Bruce, that you're part of the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency, and they've discussed there that the climate projections show that this area is going to get more water in a shorter amount of time, making these storms a more common occurrence. You know, and the county roads right now don't have the proper infrastructure in place to deal with the current runoff. How is the county planning to prepare for this increased precipitation in the future?
Well, we are. First of all, can you tell me where this was exactly where this gets flooded or It's on.
It's coming off of Ridge Road to Virginia Avenue and then on to West Park Avenue. So it's the West Park area up here, and Ridge Upper is private and they have a culvert, and then when it meets county it doesn't. They came out and they tried to put a berm in to stop it from popping over and coming down our street. So they have been here looking at it, but it's kind of just like a band-aid, everything they've done.
Okay. I will, if you, again, please, could you write me an email just to, what you just told me? That way I can just pass it on, because we're getting a lot of these. So that'd be really nice if I could get this of where the problem happens. I wrote it down, but if you could just get it to me, that would be great. We have priorities. Like I said, we have $200 million from the CZU fire disaster throughout the county that we're trying to pick up, and we did pass Measure D, and that helped. The county voters did, but that only provides about $3 million a year. And then the Senate Bill 1 from the state legislature gives us about $6 million a year. So we say we have $8 to $10 million, but we've got a lot of work to do, and we just have to go to priorities where roads are most heavily traveled. But another factor in that is where it's really dangerous, no matter where you are. This sounds like one of those situations. So if you could please send me that and let me see where it is if it is on the list, and I'll try to get back to you on it. Steve Wiesner is in charge of our county roads in the Public Works Department. He's a Felton resident, and he knows the valley, and I think he has particular attention toward the valley. So I'll try to have him look at that. But if you could get that to me, I'd appreciate it. That'd be great.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I think office was originally CC'd like 2 or 3 years ago on all of it. So we'll follow back up with that and send that off to you. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Is there any other questions? Well, in that case, thank you so much for being here. I particularly am looking forward to the assessment in terms of the recovery for the CZU fire victims. I'll be paying attention this Tuesday or next Tuesday about what we learned there. But I would second Monica's statement that I think it's very helpful to have you kind of constantly out here and communicating with us about what's going on, because I think a lot of good work is being done, and obviously there are struggles in terms of, like you said, state and federal, and what can county do and what can't county do. But the answer to that is helping people understand those interactions and facilitating working with the other levels of government to the extent possible. So
yeah, that would I appreciate it. I really appreciate your interest in helping get reaching out to people and give them the information. But we'll have another local town hall meeting in the near future. I can tell you to get an update of what we're doing. I really appreciate everything that you're doing and drawing attention to see where people can really help as much as they can. So that's great. It's my pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you very much for allowing me to join you. It took a little time that I got there, but anyway,
it was great.
Thank you very much.